negotiate in your lease, if you're the surface mineral, the mineral owner has the right to the free gas. So that if you only own the mineral, you may not need to negotiate that. If you own it in fee, which is you own all of it, the surface and the mineral, then you may want free gas. And they usually, it used to be 150,000 MCF, now it's about 200 MCF a year. Typically what they'll do is if you go over that, then you'll get charged whatever the market is in your area per MCF. I think it's probably hard to go over that, but unless you like it really warm.
Could that be multiplied per well, or is that total?
Typically that's probably just coming from one well.
Okay.
Yeah, but I would look, if you're thinking of multiple wells and you have a large tract, you may have cabins or something on it that you want run, I think you should address that in your lease.
We're responsible for running.
You're responsible for running the lines, you're responsible for maintaining the lines, all that stuff. But, they may, if you try to do multiple wells, they may cap it at 200,000 for a lease. Because that could get, if you're doing multiple wells, that could get into a lot of, that comes off that's supposed to come off their end of things, the 200,000 MCF.
One behind and then right here.
Did you talk about the
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. The West Virginia DEP.
Oh, in Ohio, state by state?
It's typically state by state. Each state has its own environmental protection agency from the state level. The oil and gas has never been, and hopefully never will be, quite frankly, have rules enforced from the federal level. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I understand. Yeah. But the DEP in each state has the authority to direct where those fluids go or how they're going to be disposed of, and they do that through their permitting process. So that when you get the permit, you should know what they plan on doing with it. And in West Virginia, if it was a typical well, they'll just land apply it. They'll treat it. They'll get all the fluid or the oil and whatever they can mechanically get off from the pit that they're going to have, and then they just literally land apply it. And there's a permit for that, but that will be in the drilling permit of how they're going to do that. Now they should identify how they're going to dispose of that in their drilling permit.
Behind you and then up there.
Yes, sir.
As I mentioned before, I'm on the customer end of the
I understand.
gas. But
I don't know what that means,
I pay for gas. I
Okay.
sell it directly to the customer.
Okay.
To the customers using the gas, getting the gas for free, what I always recommend to the customers is if you have a gas company available, nothing available, well, I was going to say try and make them pay you the same amount for that amount of gas from the utility, because the BTU value is not always steady and it burns up your equipment.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point.
You have a high risk.
That's a very good
of
point
freezing
for the free gas
being
thing.
without gas.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good point. Thank you.
You got one right here?
Yes, sir.
What does it take to keep a lease in effect?
It takes them complying with the payments. If there's a delay, most of the leases now have a bonus payment to them, a one-time payment. Go ahead.
Okay, we got a guy come in and said, well, your grandfather signed with us in 1913, you have to sign with us.
No.
Not unless you got a producing well on it.
If there's a producing well on it, there's no need for him to come back in.
What constitutes producing well? They take a little bit out of it each year, is that making it a
If they
producing well?
send 1 MCF in West Virginia, if they send 1 MCF or 1 barrel of oil to the DEP, that is a producing well.
Okay.
And sometimes they do that.
If you sign a check, okay?
Yeah, if they send you a check and you cash it, and then they're.
Well, I don't think we weren't getting a check on that piece of property, right? If this piece of property was lost as far as the tax records were concerned,
Okay.
only the oil company apparently knew it existed because they had that lease.
Yeah.
And they actually had to research tax records to find who owned it,
Okay.
okay, at this point. And then they came, my mother owns it, but
Okay.
they
Gets the check and then they send one of the members of the family.
Okay.
gets a check apparently.
Uh-huh.
And sends out a little few cents every year.
Right, right. As long as it's producing.
If they're getting 1 MCF off of it a year, it's.
Yeah, and a lot of
Okay.
what'll happen is a lot of them will let it lay for 9 or 10 months and then go produce it. And
Yeah.
now they've got they don't have an abandoned well. So if they have an abandoned well, then the state should come in and order them to plug it.
Okay.
And once they plug all the wells on your property, they go away. If you have producing wells, and they come in, you have 3 producing wells, and they plug all 3 wells, then there is no more lease unless they start paying the delay rentals or something like that.
Is there anyone that actually goes around and looks to see if these wells are producing, or if they're just saying they're producing so they can hold a lease?
No, it's the honor system.
Yeah, so this piece of land is out where you can't get there without.
I know, I
As soon
know.
as piece of
They are
land-
required to file production on each of their wells every March 31st for the previous year. It would be impossible to go, and I'll defend the DEP a little bit, but it'd be impossible to go out and check every well and see that it had produced 10 MCF or 100 or whatever. It's a daunting task, to say the least.
You got one here and then a gentleman